All right. Well, we are back once again in our continuing journey through the Gospel of Mark. We are up to Mark chapter 12. And today's video will be about Mark 12, verses 13 to 17, which is Jesus responding to the question about paying the taxes to Caesar. We'll take a look at the whole of chapter 12 as well, because there's several other things that are going on there. But we'll focus in on verses 13 to 17. And this is for my message on October the 2nd. So, and we will come back in our next video, and we'll revisit this after I've had another week to process through this and be a little bit more clear on what the direction will be for the message. So we talked about this past Sunday. We talked about chapter 11 and the fig tree sandwich with Jesus cleansing the temple. And then following that, in verse 27 in Mark 11, Jesus' authority is questioned. They ask the chief priests and the scribes and the elders come and ask by what authority he's doing these things, meaning, teaching and preaching and healing and doing miracles. And so instead of answering his question, Jesus does one of my favorite things, which is to answer a question with a question. And he says, well, tell me this. By what did the baptism of John come from heaven, or was it of human origin? And so then they argue with each other about, whether it's from heaven or whether it's from human origin. And they say, if it's from heaven, then he'll say, why don't you believe me? And if they say, if it comes from human origin, then the crowd will be upset. So they say, we don't know. And Jesus says, neither will I tell you by what authority I am doing these things. And then chapter 12 opens with another parable. So this is the parable of the wicked tenants. And this is really only a veiled point at the religious leaders. And so there's a man who plants a vineyard and puts a fence around it, digs a pit for the wine press, builds a watchtower, and then he leases it out to tenants. And he goes away. And when it's time for the landowner to collect the fruit, the produce of the land, throw back to the fig tree, if you want to think about that too, then he sends a servant to go and get the owner's share of the produce. And the tenants beat up the servant, send him away empty-handed, sends another slave, and they kill that one. And verse 5 says, so it was with many others, some they beat and some they killed. And so verse 6 says he has one other, he has a beloved son, and the master of the vineyard says, if I send my beloved son, they will have to respect him. And verse 7 says, those tenants said to one another, this is the heir, come, let us kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. So they seized him, killed him, and threw him out of the vineyard. So just as a matter of course, you don't get to inherit the beloved son's inheritance just because you kill him. It doesn't work that way. So anyway,
weird analogy.
So anyway, so then verse 9, what will the owner of the vineyard do? He'll come and destroy the tenants and give the vineyard to others. And then Jesus quotes Psalm 18:22, the stone that the builder has rejected has become the cornerstone. This was the Lord's doing, and it is amazing in our eyes. And then verse 12, they realize what Jesus is doing, and they want to arrest him, but still they fear the crowd. So this is, again, a throwback to the part of Jesus teaching about or cleansing the temple. The crowd is spellbound by his teaching there. They're looking for a way to kill him. They want to kill him. They want to arrest him, but they still fear the crowd. So they left him and go away. And then then verse 13, which is the text for the 2nd of October, there's another they've sort of regrouped, and they're sending another contingency in to talk to Jesus. And so this time they send Pharisees and Herodians to try to trap him, to test him. Literally, it's this idea that they're sending these guys in to ask Jesus a question, and then be able to bring charges against him by the way that he answers the question. So they're trying to catch him in an off moment, and have him say something that is seditious or blasphemous or something, so that they can scoop up and get him. Now, the last time the Pharisees and the Herodians were together was back in Mark chapter 3, when Jesus heals the man with the withered hand. And so that same kind of scenario plays out there, where if you flip back to Mark chapter 3, right at the opening of that, Jesus enters the synagogue, and there was a man who had a withered hand who was there, and they watched to see whether he would cure him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. Again, it's this idea, they've set up this guy. They put this guy with the withered hand right on the front row. So Jesus sees him as soon as he walks in, and they know that he's going to have compassion on him. And so they set him up. And so Jesus has the man come forward, and he asks a question again: is it lawful to do good or to do harm on the Sabbath, to save life or to kill? And they are silent. And he's angry at their hardness of heart. And he heals the man, and the Pharisees and conspire with the Herodians how to destroy him. So the Pharisees, Herodians, here they are again in chapter 12. And so here's the question that they ask, and here's how they set it up. They say, "Teacher, we know that you are sincere and show deference to no one, for you do not regard people with partiality, but teach the way of God in accordance with truth." So, I mean, they're just, they're like treating them like a piece of toast and just buttering them up. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they say, "Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not? Should we pay them or should we not?" Now, so they're asking this either or question. And again, they're trying to trap him. They're trying to get him to commit to one side or the other. They're trying to get him to say either, yes, pay the taxes, therefore siding with the Romans, therefore inciting the Jewish, populace that don't like the Romans, or to say, no, don't pay the taxes, therefore siding with the Jewish populace who don't like the Romans, but then being on the bad side of the Romans. So they come in and, they can go to Pontius Pilate and be like, "Hey, he says don't pay taxes." And they can, and Rome can do what Rome does to people who defy Rome. And, but the middle of verse 15 says, "But knowing their hypocrisy, he said to them, 'Why are you putting me to the test? Bring me a denarius and let me see it.'" So, so he says he knows that they are play acting. He knows that they are not being truthful in the way that they're asking the question, the way they're setting it up, and that they are deliberately trying to entrap him. So again, he answers with a question, but then he goes a little bit farther, and he says, "Bring me a denarius, a Roman coin, and let me see it." And they brought one, and then he said to them, "Whose head is this, and whose title?" And so they hold it in their hand, and they answer, "It's the emperor's." So Jesus says, "Give to the emperor what is the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's." And they were utterly amazed at him. They're flabbergasted. They're astonished by this response. Now, so oftentimes this text is used to talk about this separation between church and state, and like, okay, Jesus is talking about, okay, um, you know, there's the spiritual world, and then there's the physical world. And so in the physical world, there's we have to pay taxes, and we you know there's our regular living. And then in the spiritual world, there's God, and there's faith, and there's all that kind of stuff. But that's not really what number one, that's not how the Jews view the world at this point in time, and they still actually don't. But in the first century Jewish culture, there was no division between spiritual and physical. They believe that the earth is the Lord's, and all that is in it. Psalm 24. They look at the creation of the world and realize that God created all of that, and so therefore all of creation then lifts praises to God. So in their cosmology, there's a sphere of creation, and everything in that is God's. So it's not a matter of, okay, money is this side thing over here, and then spirituality is over here. And that's not how Jesus views the world. It's not how the Jews of the first century viewed the world. So the dichotomy that the Pharisees and the Herodians are trying to create here is actually one they don't actually believe in. But they're trying to use it to trap Jesus. So I'm going to show a clip from N.T. Wright and his section on this particular passage in relation. It starts with the coin and how Jesus is being incredibly subversive in the midst of this. So I'm going to share that piece right there. All right. All right. Here we go. Take a listen. Oh, hold on a second. It's playing on the wrong thing. Playing on my headset. Okay.
Caesar. So this is a crucial political question. And just as journalists today will confront people who are aspiring to high office with the trick question, which will set some voters one way and other voters another, so the combination of Pharisees and Herodians, the ultra-zealous on the one hand and the royalists on the other, they want to nail Jesus. And so they send somebody who pretends to be innocent and normal. And yes, okay, teacher, we know that you're sincere, they say. You show deference to no one, flatter, 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 because you don't regard people with partiality, but you teach God's way properly. So tell us, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar, or isn't it? Jesus, by way of response, says, well, show me this tribute penny. And it just so happens that I have one such tribute penny here. This is one of the Tiberius coins that they would have had. They're small, but you can see clearly Tiberius's head on one side with some writing.
So you can see the image of the emperor here on the coin. So that's Tiberius, the emperor.
Around it, and then the image of God on the other side with again some writing around it. And Jesus says, whose is this image and this inscription? And Jesus knows, and they know, that the inscription says various things: Tiberius Caesar, son of the divine Augustus. Oh, yes, well, Augustus had been deified. Tiberius was his adopted son. So on the one side, this says Son of God. Isn't that interesting? And on the other side, it says Pontifex Maximus, the great Roman high priest. Well, well, here we are in the temple with an image that says Son of God and High Priest. Just how many resonances can we set up here? And so they say, well, it's Caesar's image. Yes, okay, they admit. They know perfectly well. They have been, as it were, caught red-handed with the hated imperial coinage in their possession. And Jesus then comes out with this line, which has been so misunderstood, because in the last 200 or 300 years, with the split level universe of modern Western philosophy, we've had the idea that God is a long way away, and we've got political rulers here. So we give one their due and we give the other their due. So when Jesus says, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's, people have said, oh, well, that's church and state. You do God stuff, you do Caesar stuff, and never the twain shall meet. Those are not the resonances set up by this saying in Jesus' world, far from it. Quite apart from anything else, Jesus knew and his hearers knew that human beings are made in the image of God. Genesis says so. So that when Jesus is talking about an image, and when he's relating it to himself, then the idea of what belongs to God is not simply some ethereal spiritual stuff somewhere. It's actually everything to do with being human. But more than that, 200 years before Jesus' time, as I've already mentioned in this call.
All right. I'll hang it there for a minute. So, again, Jesus is not talking about separation of church and state. There's very much a holistic piece here. But the coin that is produced here and given to Jesus is this Roman coin, and it's got a picture of Caesar on one side and Tiberius on the other side, and has the inscription Tiberius Caesar, son of Augustus, and then on the other side it has the high priest. So again, the context of where this is taking place, because this is in the same location as what's been going on since chapter 11. When Jesus comes to the temple, it's still at this point it's still Tuesday, and they're in the realm of the temple, and there's a coin that says that it's for the Son of God and the great high priest. So there's this combination that the Romans have put together that says, okay, our leader is divine, therefore his son is divine as well, and also he's the high priest of the Roman cult, and they and again the question is, do we pay the taxes to Rome? Do we pay the taxes to the emperor? And so again, he answers, give to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's. And there's this sense that he's drawing this really clear distinction between the ways of Rome and the ways of God. So the reason that they're utterly amazed is because they know the history. The Jewish people know the history that's gone on and has taken place in at least for Jesus's context in the last couple of hundred years prior to that, of revolutions, of uh, uh, of opportunities that the Jewish people have taken to try to get the Romans out, and then and the Syrians before that. There's a real kind of revolutionary moment that that Jesus is speaking into at this point. So let's see. All right. So this is from N.T. Wright's commentary on Mark. So so he says that there are three different things that Jesus is doing in this moment, and what he says is, he says, if you say give Caesar what belongs to Caesar, it can be taken as a way of saying yes, pay the tax, but without the sting of yes, submit to the Romans as your master. He says, because he's drawing attention to the image on the coin, which is borderline idolatrous, and even in the Jewish coins, they had a struggle around whether to even put images of plants and things like that on there. But he says it could be, the command could be along the lines of send this filthy stuff back where it came from. It's contemptuous, he says, without opening Jesus to the charge of sedition. So by give to Caesar what is Caesar's, he's saying, he could be saying, give this stuff back. You don't really need it. It also, he says, secondly, it also nicely echoes the Maccabean slogan. You know who the Maccabees are from the 2nd century? Yeah. Yep. BC. So about 200 years before Jesus, the Maccabean revolt happened against the Syrians. And one of their slogans was pay back the Gentiles what they deserve and obey the commands of the law. So if you can find a copy of, if you have a Bible with the Apocrypha in it, it'll have First Maccabees in there, or you can look it up online. First Maccabees 2:68 is that verse. So there's this sense that in the revolt, the Maccabean revolt, they wanted to give back and push back against the Gentiles as hard as they could, but then also obey the commandments of God. They were very zealous, so they wanted to make sure that they were keeping the law. So the phrase that Jesus used could be echoing that Maccabean slogan, where it's give the pagans what they deserve, pay the Gentiles back in their own coin. It could be some kind of revolutionary slogan. It could be it could be some way, shape, or form of echoing that without out and out just using the same words, because the kingdom of God, N.T. Wright says, is all about the one true God becoming king of the world, demoting the petty princelings who style themselves sons of God, high priests, or whatever. It doesn't leave Jesus open to a direct charge, but because his words are actually saying, yes, pay the tax. The third thing that Jesus is doing is to give the command to give to God what belongs to God. Opens a few questions. 3 of them, in fact. He says, so how do you interpret what Jesus says as giving back to God what is God's? He says, did he mean that because humans bear God's image, all humans owe themselves, their very lives, to God, and should give those lives back as one might give a coin back to Caesar? That's the first question. Second one is, did he mean, standing there in the temple courtyards, that the sacrificial system, which was supposed to be the way of giving God his due, needed to be superseded by a more complete worship. So, is he rendering the sacrificial system obsolete? And third, did he mean against the normal revolutionaries that if you really gave your whole self to God, you would discover that using violence to fight violence, using evil to fight evil, simply wouldn't do. And N.T. Wright concludes that he thinks he means a little bit of all of those. Again, there's this sense that in saying render to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to render to God what is God's, Jesus is again, he's turning things upside down. He's not picking a side. He's not getting trapped the way that the Herodians and the Pharisees want him to get trapped, because he's not because he doesn't directly answer the question that has been asked him, because he answers with the question, because he then puts the very temple tax coin, or the very Roman tax coin, into their hands. He has almost implicated them as well in their oppression of the people. So there's just a ton going on here. And that's why they are utterly amazed at what Jesus says, because he doesn't implicate himself. He doesn't trap himself in a corner. They don't have a leg to stand on, either with the Jewish authorities or the Roman authorities, by the way that he answered the question. But it's but the phrase that he uses is really not about bifurcating the world between God's stuff and Caesar stuff. That's not what he's doing. But that isn't the end. I mean, chapter 12 goes on. There's more. They ask more questions, and then the Sadducees come in. The Sadducees are a whole ball of mess, in my opinion. And they ask this question about the resurrection, which they don't believe in, and they paint this poor lady with 7 husbands, that are all brothers and no kids. Whose wife will she be? And all this kind of stuff. And Jesus is like, God, don't get it. And it's one of those, I think this is a palm to forehead kind of moment for Jesus, is that you don't get it. You don't understand what Scripture says, and you don't understand what's actually happening. And because God is the God of the living, not the dead. And then chapter 12 ends with it starts to wind down with the greatest commandment, which is Jesus again quoting Scripture from Deuteronomy chapter 6 and Leviticus 19, and then the scribe that asks him the question echoes back everything that he says, and Jesus looks at him in verse 34 and says, "You are not far from the kingdom of God." And after that, no one dared to ask him any more questions. So then there's this interesting little exchange about Psalm 110 verse 1, and who's the son of David, and how the Messiah the son of David, and how can David call his son Lord? And the large crowd was listening with delight. And then he denounces the scribes because they like to walk around in long robes and be greeted with respect and have the best seats, and they and yet they devour people's inheritance and say long prayers, and they will receive a greater condemnation. And then there's a widow who puts in 2 small copper coins and into the treasury. So again, they're in the court of the Gentiles, and there would have been these large metal offering boxes that would have been strategically placed around for people to put in their offerings. And so Jesus is sitting opposite the treasury, and he sees people placing large sums in. Now, they would have all been metal coins. And if you're going to dump, if you've ever gone to like cash in your piggy bank full of coins into the coin counter deal, it just makes a ton of noise. Well, if you take that much, that many coins, and you dump them into a giant metal box, it's going to make a racket. And so Jesus, he sees all these rich people pouring in all these coins and making a big racket, making a big show of everything. And then there's this widow that puts in 2 copper coins, the smallest, denomination of coins that were available, and it barely makes a sound. And he points to her as the example of putting in all that she had to live on, and the others gave out of their abundance, and she out of her poverty. So it's this, again, this dichotomy between making a show of your offering versus and doing it to literally be heard. And then this woman that comes. So anyway, so this whole all of chapter 12 takes place in that court of the Gentiles on the Temple Mount. So there's just people all around, various people sort of, walking in and around. And again, it's Passover week, so there's just people everywhere. And these questions about the Messiah, questions about the resurrection, questions about paying taxes, questions, about what the commandment, the greatest commandment is. These, the parable of the fig tree, the parable of the wicked tenants, and all of these things are happening in the presence of all of the pilgrims that are coming for Passover, and all along the way, the religious authorities are trying to get Jesus to trip up on something, and they are unable to do that. So, all right. So chapter 12 is chock full of stuff. Chapter 13 is a whole different ball of wax. We'll talk about that in a couple of weeks, but chapter 13 is sort of this mini little apocalyptic piece of literature in the midst of the gospel. And we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. All right. Questions, comments? Something you want to push or want to ask about, or I might be able to answer your question.
Why are they called Herodians? What are Herodians? How are they different from Sadducees or the Pharisees?
Sure. So Herodians are so they conspire with Herod, the supposed king of the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
So they were Herod supporters. Therefore, they would be on the lookout for those who are trying to subvert what the Romans are trying to do, because Herod was a puppet king, basically, mm-hmm. set up by Tiberius to rule in that region, along with his other three other brothers in that region. And he's one of the sons of Herod the Great. This is not Herod the Great. Right. The Herod at this particular moment in Jesus's life, in his adult life, is not Herod the Great. Herod the Great was alive when Jesus was born, and he dies not long after Jesus was born. So, So this is one of his sons.
And Herod the Great built the temple that Jesus is
Correct.
at now, right?
Yes. He began that building project. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I had seen some sources that said that there was actually the second temple still standing, and he was basically saying, "Hey, look at me! I'm going to tear this down and build a new temple." Is that right? Do you have anything about that?
Jesus saying that?
No,
Or who?
Herod deciding he's going to tear down the old temple, the second temple, and build what was called Herod's temple.
Right. So yes, the second temple is actually was built with Ezra and Nehemiah in that particular time after the exile. Then Nehemiah comes in and builds the wall around, and then they finish everything off. So when Herod the Great comes in to he's coming to he actually comes and expands the Temple Mount, and he does some construction on it to sort of shore up a few things, but I'm not aware that he tore things down and then started over. I think he just he made some enlargements and improvements to various things. He built I think he built the Antonia Fortress that's off to the north of the Temple Mount, and just off the Temple Mount proper. There's the fortress that's I think it's Antonia. If I have that, hold on, let me see if I still have that picture from last week.
One of the things that I was looking at said that he, like you said, he expanded the Temple Mount area, and he built the perimeter wall that became the enclosure for the court of the Gentiles. But they did it in a Roman style, so it almost looked like a Roman villa surrounding the Jewish holy temple, according to this what I was looking at. Anyway, I wasn't there.
Okay, let me see. I'll pop this picture up on there and see if this helps. So this is a picture I showed on Sunday,
right,
during worship, and so this is the Dome of the Rock, the big gold dome here that's in modern day Jerusalem. This is where the temple would have been, and so right over here, can you see the highlighted box?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the fortress, that's just to the north of the Temple Mount. I think that's where Herod the Great set up. I think Herod the Great built that to defend against outside forces coming. So,
right.
So I think this tree line here is like, so this is all, I think, part of the courts, and here's the outer wall. This is the eastern wall of the city. And then, so this is, if I remember correctly, so these trees down here at the bottom are at the bottom of the Mount of Olives into the Kidron Valley. And then you go across here, and again, I haven't been to the Holy Land, but you can. So the Wailing Wall is over in this direction here. It's on the west side, which you can get to. This dome right here, this Our
Mhm.
great dome right here
Right.
is, I want to say that's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre,
Mhm.
which
Okay.
is where they believe that Jesus was buried. So,
Okay.
um, and and and, and these two, I can't remember, these two domes over here are important too, but I can't remember what they are. It's not helpful, but I can't remember what that is. So, okay.
All right.
So,
Great.
so, all righty, cool. Well, there you go. All right. Other questions? Good.
Not from me. Anybody else?
Right.
Anybody?
They'll email me, I'm sure. So.
Okay.
All right, very good. Well, again, we'll come back to this this text next week and see where this might go for a message. It's a really good Bible study right now. It's not a sermon yet, so it's a good
All
Bible,
right.
but it's not
Okay.
a message yet, and so we'll get there. Anyway, thanks for jumping on, Ray, and for those of you who are watching this later, thanks for sticking with us. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. Glad to answer whatever questions you have, and we will see you again either either in the office or in worship sometime soon. So blessings to you. Have a good one.
God bless. Bye.